I paid for a premium VIP seat. Not this garbage here. Do you know who I am? Karen, the white woman said firmly to Sophia, the flight attendant. Soon, the sound of a sharp slap echoed through the aircraft cabin. Oh my God, she assaulted the flight attendant, shouted a passenger nearby. You deserved that. How dare you treat me this way? Sophia remained composed despite the slap. She didn't flinch or retaliate the slap. It was a bright Tuesday morning at Miami International Airport. She noticed Karen immediately. Welcome aboard, ma'am, Sophia offered warmly as Karen approached the aircraft entrance. Excuse me. Karen's voice projected above the ambient noise of passengers settling in. This cannot possibly be right. This was not what he paid for. 12A, a window seat with extra legroom in the premium economy section. Is there a problem with your seat, ma'am? Sophia asked calmly. Yes, there's a problem, Karen responded, not bothering to lower her voice. That's ridiculous. Karen shot back. I'd be happy to verify your reservation. May I see your boarding pass again? Karen thrust the document toward her with visible annoyance. Sophia carefully compared it to her tablet information. So you're not going to do anything about this? Karen demanded, her voice growing louder. This is how you treat customers who spend thousands with your airline. By now, the interaction had caught the attention of many nearby passengers. An elderly couple seated across the aisle exchanged concerned glances. A pillow? Karen scoffed. She turned to other passengers nearby. Are you all hearing this? Is everyone just okay with how this airline treats its customers? The gambit for public support fell noticeably flat. Most passengers averted their eyes. The elderly woman across the aisle finally spoke up. Dear, the seats are actually quite nice. My husband and I are quite comfortable. Karen shot her a withering look before turning back to Sophia. Sophia nodded professionally. Most passengers settled into the familiar rhythm of a long flight. But in seat 12A, Karen Wilson was doing none of these things. This seat is completely unacceptable, Karen stated flatly. Karen scoffed audibly. A blanket and pillow? I can't even fully extend my legs. The irony was apparent to nearby passengers. Several passengers exchanged glances as Karen continued her complaints. I'd also like to offer you a complimentary premium beverage, Sophia suggested, still maintaining her professional demeanor. I don't drink during business trips, Karen snapped, then immediately contradicted herself. Sophia continued to smile patiently. I understand your frustration. Is there anything else I can assist you with at the moment? She looked around, seemingly waiting for support from fellow travelers. Isn't anyone else uncomfortable in these ridiculous seats? The businessmen across the aisle pointedly put on noise-canceling headphones. Ma'am, the seats are fine. And I am the lead flight attendant on this flight. Here you are. Our drink service will begin shortly. Please let me know if there's anything else you need. This wasn't just about comfort. The young black mother was clearly experienced and prepared. Children sometimes get uncomfortable. Karen Wilson, however, appeared to have no interest in the social contract. Can you please control your brat? Some of us are trying to work here. Karen's voice cut through the cabin noise with startling sharpness. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to calm him down. His ears are hurting from the pressure. We'll try harder, Karen snapped. The phrase carried in an unmistakable undertone. The young mother and child were black. Sophia, alerted by the commotion, quickly made her way to the scene. Is everything all right here? She asked, immediately assessing the situation. I'm so sorry. I'm really trying. He's having trouble with the pressure in his ears. Sophia gave the mother a reassuring smile. You're doing fine. It happens to all children sometimes. She turned to Karen with a more serious expression. Ma'am, I need to ask you to return to your seat. Respectful, Karen countered. This is your only warning on this matter. Please return to your seat now, or we will have further issues. But rather than backing down, her expression shifted to one of indignation. I didn't say anything racial. This is ridiculous. Don't worry about it, she assured the mother. You're doing great, and these things happen. Excuse me, ma'am, said Carlos, another flight attendant working the cart. I'm already cramped in this inadequate seat. I don't have anywhere to move to. Carlos maintained his professional demeanor. Just a slight adjustment would be enough, ma'am. Just for a moment so we can pass. This is outrageous, Karen announced loudly. First, I'm downgraded from my rightful seat. Then, I'm attacked for requesting basic courtesy from other passengers. The passengers waiting for their meals exchanged glances of growing frustration. One passenger called from several rows back. Come on, lady. We're all hungry back here. Carlos looked genuinely confused. Ma'am, we're simply trying to provide meal service to all passengers. This is the kind of treatment loyal customers receive on this airline. What would you have done if you were seated near Karen? Let us know in the comments below. One nudged another and whispered loudly enough to be heard. Dude, this is definitely going on TikTok. Classic Karen in the wild. Another teen already had their phone out, discreetly recording the interaction. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Sophia, noticing the commotion, quickly made her way back to the scene. Understanding immediately what was happening, she approached calmly. Miss Wilson, I notice you're recording. Karen swiveled her phone to capture Sophia. Notice how she's singling me out again. Audible gasps came from several passengers. The racist undertone was no longer subtle. That's enough. Nobody's discriminating against you? Karen's eyes narrowed as she turned toward the woman who had spoken. She then returned to her phone narration. And now other passengers are ganging up on me too. Racist language or implications are not tolerated on this aircraft. This is your final warning on this matter. Additionally, you need to allow the meal service to proceed. Are you threatening me now? Karen demanded, still recording. I want your full name and employee number. James stepped forward. Ma'am, we really need to de-escalate this situation. There. Are you happy now? I hope you all enjoy watching a paying customer being abused. Tension hung in the air with passengers exchanging uneasy glances. Some were clearly uncomfortable while others appeared angry at Karen's behavior. What is this supposed to be? It doesn't look anything like the premium meal options advertised. I'm allergic to gluten, Karen announced suddenly. I can't eat pasta. I need a gluten-free option immediately. Carlos checked his tablet. This is ridiculous, Karen fumed. I'm telling you right now that I have an allergy. Are you refusing to accommodate a medical condition? Is that even legal? Miss Wilson, food allergies are something we take very seriously. Despite Sophia's obvious attempt to help, Karen seemed determined to be unsatisfied. So you're admitting you're unprepared to handle basic medical needs? We also have yogurt available if you'd prefer that. Karen looked at the offerings with visible contempt. This is what you expect me to eat for a 6-hour flight. A few pieces of fruit and a tiny bag of snacks? After downgrading me and subjecting me to harassment? Sophia explained, her patience remarkable given the circumstances. The captain is flying the aircraft, ma'am. So you're refusing to even let me speak to someone in authority? This is absurd, ma'am. What kind of snacks do you have in first class? Sophia took a deep breath. Karen interrupted again. Go check what's available in the section I actually paid for. At this point, Sophia's colleague James leaned in. I'll handle this section for a few minutes. Karen had already worked herself into an even greater state of agitation. Here you are, Miss Wilson. Our first-class cabin had one gluten-free protein plate available. One of our passengers was kind enough to accept an alternative so you could have this option. Instead of gratitude, Karen examined the plate with suspicion. What took you so long? My blood sugar is dropping and you're wandering around the plane for 20 minutes. It had been less than 5 minutes as every passenger in the vicinity could attest, but Sophia didn't correct her. I apologize for the wait. I wanted to ensure we found something appropriate for your dietary needs. Karen picked at the food with her fork, then pushed it away dramatically. This doesn't even look fresh and there's no dessert option. The regular meals all got dessert. The situation had moved beyond merely uncomfortable into something approaching surreal. Passengers were now watching openly, many with expressions of disbelief at the treatment Sophia was enduring. The elderly gentleman who had been quietly observing shook his head and muttered, "Unbelievable." Just loudly enough to be heard. Karen's head snapped toward him. Do you have something to say? Before the man could respond, Karen continued, her voice rising. All of you sitting in judgment, but none of you standing up for a customer being abused by this airline. It was at this moment that what had been a tense but contained situation exploded into chaos. Karen abruptly stood up, the protein plate tumbling from her tray table onto the floor. That's it. I've had enough of this treatment. Sophia stepped back slightly, maintaining a professional distance. Miss Wilson, I need you to return to your seat and fasten your seatbelt. Or what? Karen challenged, stepping into the aisle. You'll continue to discriminate against me. Mock my medical condition? I want your name and employee number right now. My name is Sophia Martinez, and my employee ID is visible on my badge. Sophia replied calmly, though tension was evident in her voice. Now please return to your seat. Martinez. Of course, Karen scoffed, therapist implication hanging in the air. Well, Miss Martinez, you can expect Toby looking for a new job tomorrow. My company does millions in business with this airline, and when they hear how I've been treated, Miss Wilson, Sophia interrupted firmly, this is your final warning. Return to your seat immediately, or we will have to take measures to ensure the safety of this flight. The teenagers were recording openly now, no longer bothering to be discreet. One whispered loudly to another, "This is going to blow up online." Total Karen meltdown at $35,000 EFT. Karen snapped in a movement that shocked everyone watching. She lunged forward towards Sophia. "You think this is funny? You think ruining my flight is entertaining?" With no warning, Karen's hand swung upward and connected with Sophia's face. A sharp, deliberate slap that echoed through the cabin. Gasps and shouts erupted from the passengers. The sound of the slap seemed to hang in the air as Sophia stumbled backward, her hand going to her cheek in shock. "Oh my God, she hit her!" someone shouted. "She assaulted the flight attendant," called another voice. "You deserve that. How dare you treat me this way?" Karen shouted, attempting to grab at Sophia's uniform as if to continue the assault. James intervened, placing himself between Karen and Sophia. "Ma'am, stop immediately. Return to your seat now. Don't touch me." Karen shrieked, though no one had laid a hand on her. "I'm being attacked." The absurdity of this claim, as she was clearly the aggressor, might have been almost comical if the situation weren't so serious. Several passengers had their phones out now, recording the chaos as it unfolded. The off-duty officer reached the scene and identified himself. "Ma'am, I'm a police officer. You need to stand down and return to your seat immediately." "This is none of your business," Karen shouted, still trying to get around James to reach Sophia, who was being attended to by another flight attendant who had rushed from the front of the plane. A red mark was clearly visible on Sophia's cheek where she had been struck. As Karen continued to resist, shouting accusations and attempting to advance towards Sophia, the reality of the situation became clear to everyone watching. What had begun as merely entitled and unpleasant behavior had crossed into criminal assault at 35,000 FT. The captain's voice came over the intercom, steady but authoritative. "This is your captain speaking. Due to a security incident in the main cabin, we will be making an emergency landing in Denver. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Cabin crew prepare for landing." The announcement sent a ripple of murmurs through the cabin. An emergency landing was serious. It meant significant delays, misconnections, and major disruption for all 163 people on board. Yet not a single passenger seemed to be blaming the airline. All eyes were on Karen Wilson, whose actions had forced a plane load of people to divert hundreds of miles off course. As the off-duty officer and two male passengers helped restrain Karen and return her to her seat, where she continued to shout accusations and justifications for her behavior. Sophia was brought to the front galley area. Despite the assault, she remained composed, though visibly shaken. A flight attendant applied a cold compress to her rained cheek while she communicated with the cockpit about the situation. Karen's voice could still be heard from her seat. "I didn't even hit her that hard. She's totally faking it for attention." The teenagers who had been recording exchanged glances, one of them mouthed things silently to the other. "Got it all. This is going viral for sure." As the aircraft began its descent toward Denver, the mood in the cabin was a mixture of tension, anticipation, and a strange sort of solidarity. Passengers spoke quietly among themselves, many expressing concern for Sophia and disbelief at Karen's behavior. Several offered to provide their contact information to serve as witnesses for any charges that might follow. In a bizarre twist that would later be highlighted in news coverage of the incident, Karen continued to film herself intermittently, apparently still believing she was the victim in the situation. "They're making an emergency landing because I stood up for myself," she narrated to her phone. This is what happens when you challenge authority on these airlines. What would you have done if you were in Sophia's shoes? What punishment do you think is appropriate for behavior like Karen's? Let us know in the comments below and click on the subscribe button now. With Officer Reynolds standing guard nearby, Karen was firmly directed back to her seat. Though physically compliant, she continued her verbal assault, now including the off-duty officer, in her allegations of mistreatment. As she was being seated, a new piece of information suddenly entered the already volatile situation. "Oh my God!" exclaimed one of the teenagers from a few rows back, staring at her phone in disbelief. The video is already blowing up. It's been shared like 1,000 times in the last 5 minutes. Her friend leaned over to look at the screen. "No way, it's trending already. Plane Karen is taking off." The first teen confirmed, her eyes wide with excitement. "People are saying she's going to get arrested when we land." Karen's head whipped around at the mention of videos. For the first time since the confrontation began, a flicker of something new crossed her face. Not remorse, but fear. The realization that her actions had been recorded, that evidence of her assault was already spreading across the internet, seemed to penetrate her righteousness for the first time.
"You're recording me?"
That's illegal? Karen suddenly shouted, making a grab for the teenager's phone. You don't have my permission. Officer Reynolds stepped in immediately. Ma'am, there is no expectation of privacy in a public space like this aircraft. The passengers have every right to record. Delete that right now, Karen demanded, ignoring the officer and addressing the teenager directly. I'll sue you and your parents for defamation. The girl, surprised by the sudden aggression, but emboldened by the protective presence of the officer, clutched her phone tightly. It's too late anyway. It's already online and thousands of people have seen it. This revelation seemed to trigger something in Karen. With growing desperation, she began looking around the cabin, suddenly aware of just how many passengers had their phones out. She made a sudden lunge across the aisle, attempting to grab another passenger's device. Give me that. You're all conspiring against me. Officer Reynolds firmly but carefully restrained her, ensuring she remained in her seat. Ma'am, if you continue this behavior, I will have to restrain you for the remainder of the flight. As this confrontation unfolded, another passenger who had been quietly observing the situation suddenly spoke up. Wait a minute. I recognize you, he said, addressing Karen. You're Karen Wilson from Skyar Capital, aren't you? The name landed like a bombshell in the cabin. Skyar Capital was well known in the aviation industry as a major investment firm with significant holdings in several airlines, including, as it happened, the very airline they were currently flying. You work for one of this airline's biggest investors, the passenger continued. The irony of the situation not lost on anyone within earshot. Isn't your firm on the board? Karen's expression shifted from anger to panic. The implications were immediate and obvious. Not only was she facing potential criminal charges for assaulting a flight attendant, but her professional reputation and position were now squarely in the crosshairs as well. That's not relevant, she stammered. Her previous bluster notably diminished. This is about how I've been treated as a customer. So, you're saying an employee of airline investments at Skyar Capital doesn't know that assaulting flight crew is a federal offense? Another passenger chimed in, the disbelief evident in his voice. The solidarity among the passengers was remarkable. Those seated near Karen formed a protective barrier around the teenagers and other passengers who had recorded the incident. When Karen made another grab for a phone, 3 people simultaneously moved to block her. We all saw what happened, stated an elderly woman firmly. You assaulted that young lady who was just doing her job. Shame on you. She was wonderful to all of us and you treated her terribly, added another passenger. We're not going to let you intimidate these kids or delete the evidence. As the aircraft began its descent toward Denver, something extraordinary happened. A spontaneous round of applause broke out for Sophia as she emerged from the galley area. Cold compress still held to her face to ensure all passengers were properly secured for landing. The show of support. Hundreds of people expressing their solidarity through applause visibly moved the flight attendant, who offered a small, grateful smile despite her injury. As the plane descended, the captain himself emerged. Captain David Reynolds handed control of the aircraft to his first officer and made the unusual decision to personally assess the situation in the cabin. Captain Reynolds made his way directly to where Karen was seated. His expression was grave as he surveyed the scene. Miss Wilson, he addressed her directly, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. I have been informed of what transpired, and I want you to understand the seriousness of the situation. We have diverted this aircraft at significant operational cost due to your actions, which constitute a federal offense under aviation law. When Karen tried to defend herself, the captain cut her off. I've received reports from multiple crew members and dozens of passengers, all consistent in their account of events. More importantly, I viewed footage of the incident that has already been transmitted to our ground operations team. In a final desperate move, Karen hissed, Do you have any idea who I am? Skyar Capital controls 12% of your airline stock. One call from me and your career is over. Captain Reynolds fixed her with a steady gaze that had the entire cabin holding its breath. Miss Wilson, in my 32 years as a commercial pilot, I've had the displeasure of dealing with several passengers who believed their connections or status placed them above the law. Every single one of them discovered they were mistaken. He leaned in slightly, his voice level, but carrying an unmistakable note of steel. My responsibility is to the safety of everyone on this aircraft. Your company affiliation is irrelevant to that duty. Now I suggest you remain silent for the remainder of this flight. Inside the cabin, Sophia, still holding the cold compressed to her face, supervised the preparation with remarkable composure despite her injury. The aircraft touched down and taxied to a remote area of the airfield where the police vehicles waited. Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the security incident that prompted our diversion, we will be deplaning in a slightly different manner than usual. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until instructed otherwise. Within minutes, 3 uniformed Denver police officers boarded the plane. They conferred briefly with the flight crew before making their way down the aisle toward Karen's seat. It was at this moment that Karen made her final desperate play. As the officers approached, she unbuckled her seatbelt and attempted to move into the aisle, addressing the surrounding passengers in what appeared to be a last-ditch effort to rewrite the narrative. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding," she announced loudly. "I was provoked and mistreated. Please, if anyone here saw how they discriminated against me, speak up now." Her appeal was met with stony silence. Not a single passenger came to her defense. Instead, dozens of phones were raised again, recording her final moments on the aircraft for posterity and for the social media feeds that were already exploding with the initial footage of the assault. The lead police officer reached her row and addressed her directly. "Miss Wilson, I'm Officer Diaz with the Denver Police Department. We've received reports of an assault on a crew member. I need you to come with us." "This is ridiculous," Karen protested. "I barely touched her. She's completely exaggerating her injury for attention." Officer Diaz remained professionally impassive. "Ma'am, please gather your belongings and come with us." "I will not," Karen responded, her voice rising again. "I have connections at this airline. I want to speak to your supervisor immediately. Miss Wilson, you can either walk off this aircraft with us voluntarily, or we can place you under arrest and escort you off. Which would you prefer?" This ultimatum seemed to briefly stun Karen into silence. She looked around the cabin one last time, perhaps hoping for some last-minute intervention or support, but found only the unwavering gazes of dozens of witnesses to her behavior. When Karen attempted to walk off the aircraft unrestrained, Officer Diaz gently but firmly stopped her. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but due to the nature of the allegations and your behavior, as reported by the flight crew, we will need to place you in handcuffs." "Handoffs?" Karen's voice rose in genuine shock. "You cannot be serious. Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yes, ma'am. We've been fully briefed on your identity and occupation," Officer Diaz replied calmly. "Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." The click of the handcuffs closing around her wrists was audible throughout the cabin. For many passengers, this was the moment the seriousness of the situation truly registered. What had begun as merely entitled behavior had escalated to the point where a corporate executive was being led off an aircraft in handcuffs. As Karen was escorted toward the front of the aircraft, she passed by Sophia, who was giving her statement to another officer. Their eyes met briefly, the assaulted flight attendant with her swollen cheek and cold compress, the handcuffed passenger who had struck her. In that moment, the power dynamic that Karen had tried so desperately to establish throughout the flight was finally definitively reversed. As Karen was finally led off the aircraft and onto the jetway, the cabin erupted into spontaneous applause, not celebratory, but rather an expression of collective relief and solidarity with the crew who had handled the situation with such professionalism. Meanwhile, inside the terminal, an unexpected scene was unfolding. Word of the incident had spread like wildfire, not just through social media but through official channels as well. Denver International Airport was now playing host to an impromptu media gathering, with local news crews setting up cameras near the security area, where Karen would eventually be escorted through. The videos posted by the teenagers had been reposted by several major social media accounts, accumulating hundreds of thousands of views within the first hour alone. Local news stations had dispatched crews to the airport almost immediately. As passengers began to deplane, they were surprised to be approached by reporters asking for their accounts of what had transpired. Many willingly shared their perspectives, creating a real-time multi-angle narrative of the incident that would dominate local news that evening and national news by the following morning. The airline's senior representative made a brief statement to the assembled media. "We are aware of an incident that occurred on a flight today which necessitated a diversion to Denver. The safety and well-being of our passengers and crew is always our highest priority. We have zero tolerance for any form of assault or abuse directed at our team members." By the time Karen, still in handcuffs, was escorted through the terminal toward a police vehicle waiting outside, the hashtag #HangPlaneKaren was trending nationally on multiple social media platforms. The teenagers who had captured the original footage were being contacted by major news networks for permission to use their videos. And Sophia Martinez, still providing detailed statements to authorities in Denver, had no idea that she was about to become a symbol of grace under pressure for millions of people across the country. While Karen faced the justice system, her professional life crumbled with stunning rapidity. Skyr Capital, the investment firm where she had served as a director of airline investments, issued a public statement just 18 hours after the incident. Skyr Capital has zero tolerance for violent, discriminatory, or unprofessional behavior of any kind, regardless of context. The actions displayed in the widely circulated videos from Flight AA2478 are completely inconsistent with our firm's values and expectations for leadership. Effective immediately, Karen Wilson is no longer employed by our organization. We extend our sincere apologies to the flight attendant involved, the airline, and all passengers affected by this unfortunate incident. The airline itself released a more measured statement, careful to respect the ongoing legal process while firmly supporting their employee. What happened next for Sofia Martinez transformed what could have been a traumatic career setback into an unexpected turning point. 3 days after the incident, while still recovering from the physical and emotional impacts of the assault, Sofia received a phone call that would change the trajectory of her career. The airline CEO, Michael Brennan, personally called to check on her well-being and to express the company's support. What began as a courtesy call evolved into something much more significant. When Brennan mentioned the extraordinary volume of positive passenger feedback the airline had received about Sofia's conduct. In my 15 years leading this airline, the CEO told her, I've never seen such an outpouring of support and admiration for a crew member. Dozens of passengers have written to commend your professionalism, restraint, and dignity under absolutely intolerable circumstances. By the end of that call, Sofia had been offered a promotion to senior cabin crew trainer, a position that would not only increase her salary by 35%, but also provide more regular hours. A life-changing development for a single mother who had struggled with the unpredictable schedule of regular flight service. The airline publicly announced Sofia's promotion 1 week after the incident, timing the announcement to coincide with their introduction of enhanced passenger conduct policies and crew protection measures. The press release featuring Sofia's story and new role became the airline's most shared social media post of the year, generating overwhelmingly positive public response. But perhaps the most touching development came from an unexpected source. The elderly couple, who had witnessed the entire incident from nearby seats, started an online fundraiser titled Standing with Sofia, hoping to raise a modest sum as a gesture of appreciation for her grace under pressure. Their simple campaign resonated far beyond their expectations. Within 9 days, over 30,000 people had contributed to the fund, raising more than $150,000. Money that would allow Sofia to establish a college fund for her daughter and make a down payment on a small house in her neighborhood, freeing her from the rental market that had consumed so much of her flight attendant's salary for years. When interviewed about the outpouring of support, Sofia remained characteristically humble. I was just doing my job, she told reporters. The real heroes were the passengers who stood up for what was right, who refused to let intimidation win the day. The incident on Flight A2478 serves as a powerful reminder of several important truths in our increasingly connected world. First, that racism should never be allowed. And secondly, that service workers, whether in the sky or on the ground, deserve basic dignity and respect, regardless of a customer's status or frustrations. The days when the customer is always right could be used to justify abusive behavior are rapidly fading, replaced by a growing consensus that mutual respect must be the foundation of all service interactions. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends and family.